Hello, my name's Bob White. I and Jill, my wife, have a daughter called Rosalind, who was born profoundly deaf. And I want to talk to you about how Delta and natural auralism helped us and especially helped Rosalind. Well, before we talk about Delta and natural auralism, I'll give you some background about Ros. She's now over 30, so it's going back a bit in time, but she was born in 1988, and she was diagnosed with a hearing impairment, a very severe impairment at just under a year. She'd failed a health visitor's test a couple of times, and so she went into hospital where they had to anaesthetise her pretty thoroughly in order to do, I think, a brainstem test it was called. And at the end of that process, we were left with a child who we were told was profoundly deaf, and it took us quite a long time to wake her up and take her home. So as you can imagine, we were pretty unhappy, pretty upset about the whole process. Anyway, her basic hearing was thresholded, as they say, at around 100 decibels. I think 98 on one side and 102 or 3 on the other side, and that is called profoundly deaf. And she got her first post-oral hearing aids from the Children's Hearing Assessment Centre in Nottingham on her first birthday. Well, as I say, we were in a bit of a state about this whole process, and we asked here and we asked there, and luckily it happened that we had heard of someone in the town who we knew vaguely who had a hearing impaired daughter, and they said, for goodness sake, go to a Delta summer school, find out about natural auralism, it'll change your life. And it did. So what's natural auralism? Well, as I say on the slide here, it espouses the idea that your deaf child learns to be like any other child. They listen and they talk, they interact, they read lips. Everyone reads lips, whether they've got a hearing impairment or not. And they learn by listening. And it's about using the child's residual hearing. And pretty well everyone has residual hearing, even people who are profoundly deaf, because profound deafness is a measurement. And with amplification, you can get pretty good results. Their hearing, as I say, is impaired, not non-existent. The clue is in the name. Now, Delta runs summer schools. They're residential for a few days, and they don't cost all that much. I can't remember how much, but it's a nominal amount. And when Ros was getting on for 2, I think, if I recall correctly, we went on a summer school, if I recall correctly, at Warwick University. And we stayed there for about 3 days, I think, if I recall correctly. And some rather nice young people went and took Ros away and played with her and did things. There were about 20 people at this summer school, if I recall, most of whom had children with them. And the children were all taken off and played with by and went out to see animals and on taking days out doing this, that and the other by the helpers, while we went into lectures. And we learnt a lot. We learnt about hearing, hearing aids, how to make hearing aids work, how speech works, how to learn about speech. And above all, we were taught not to be pessimistic. There's all to play for, we were told. And they were right. Any specifics I can point to? Well, hearing impaired children learn language like any other child. They listen, they form sounds from what they hear, they experiment, they make mistakes, they get things right, sometimes they get things wrong, but basically they use what hearing they've got, and if you amplify appropriately and you're careful about what you do, then they learn like any other child to speak. You have to work a bit harder, I think. You have to learn what techniques to use, and the child certainly has to work harder, I think, overall. But you learn, with a bit of practice, you learn what to do, and it's a bit different, but it's entirely workable. And mainly, you do what you do with any child, which is to enjoy them, to teach them, to speak to them, to engage with them, and so on. It's wonderful. Let's get a few fundamentals clear right at the outset, shall we? The first thing is to make sure your child is actually hearing sounds, that the sounds are going to their eardrum. And that requires that you stay pretty alert to the equipment and the processes. We assembled a kit. We had a puffer. It's a sort of thing that puffs air, and you use that to puff condensation out of the tubes that go into the moulds into the child's ear. We had a thing called a stethoclip. A stethoclip's a kind of thing that looks like a kind of cheap and nasty stethoscope in a way. You put it in your ears and the tube goes down to the hearing aid, and you can listen to how the hearing aid sounds, and you can hear rather as they hear. You need batteries. You get batteries free on the NHS, and you need plenty of them in our experience. And We had a sort of zip-top little bag in which we kept all this stuff, and every night we sat up in bed, and before we went to sleep, we checked Rosalind's hearing aids ready for the next day, puffed out the condensation, changed the batteries as necessary, made sure, listened to them on the stethoscope, made sure it all worked. You need to keep getting batteries and keep changing them. We worked out they lasted 3 or maybe 4 days, so we changed them every 2 days, and we had a piece of paper with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on, and dots, and we peeled off the little stickers that come on the batteries and stuck them on to make sure we knew, oh, we last had one changed on Monday, so now it's Wednesday, so we'll do another one. So don't wait for them to run out. Batteries that run out are no use to anyone. I'm afraid that little children's ears grow at a fair old speed, and so you have to have the moulds made on a recurring basis. Surprisingly often, there have been occasions when we were in there once a week, every 10 days, having new moulds made for Ros, because her little ears, especially when she was small, were growing fast, and if the ear grows, then you get feedback. The sound bounces around inside the ear and comes back out again. It makes a whistling noise, and that is not helping her to hear. You have to accept, I'm afraid, that background noise in the house has to diminish dramatically. Things like music pretty well stopped in our house for some years. TVs weren't normally running when she was around, so background sound like that was not running. And if you listen through a stethoscope to a hearing aid when someone flushes a toilet, there's a shh noise that stops you hearing anything else at all. So background noise is trouble. You have to try and find a way of diminishing it. With little children especially, hearing aids fall out. They play, they roll about. Sometimes they take them out because they're annoying them. They fall off their ears. All sorts of things happen like that. Well, if the hearing aids aren't in and securely in and not whistling, then the child is not hearing what's going on. So you've got to keep a very close eye on that. We were lucky. Ros took to it pretty quickly and she didn't tend to fight the hearing aids. She immediately saw the results, I think. And so we were very lucky. But not everyone says that. Sometimes you have to stay focused to keep up with it. If you can face your child when you're speaking, that's really fairly important. 1-2 meters away is really the maximum with a child, especially when they're young. You have to face them so they can read your lips. As I said before, we all read lips, but for a hearing impaired child, it's even more important. So give them the best chance you possibly can of hearing you. Right, speaking. Go where your child's going. If the child wants to play with a bucket and spade, there's no point in saying, no, let's go and play with a bicycle instead. You have to roll with the punch, I'm afraid, and go where your child wants to go, because that's the greatest chance of them being interested in listening and talking and engaging with you. So don't impose your own interests and follow what the child's talking about and run with that. I've got some videos somewhere of my mother-in-law talking to Ros when she was about 3, and Ros is standing on a stool by the sink, and she's saying, play with water, and Grandma's saying, yes, let's play with water. Oh, look, let's fill the sink. I know, pour that water in, and so on. Oh, look, it's full, and all the rest of it. So there's a constant engagement going between the two. They're pretty close to one another. It's clearly what Ros wants to talk about, and so Grandma rolls with the punch. She goes there, and then when Ros loses interest in that, wants to do something else, she's with her again, going to where she's going next. So you can't afford to just say, yeah, we're going to do this now. No, I know you're not interested, but we're going to do it anyway. You have to stay with what the child wants to do as much as you possibly can. Above all, well, when we found that Rosalind was profoundly deaf, as I said, when she was just under a year old, there's a chap called Professor Barry McCormack, I think his name was, who was the head of the Children's Hearing Assessment Centre in Nottingham. And he gave us some very wise advice. He said, look, enjoy your child. Don't let this hearing impairment thing, this deafness thing, ruin the childhood thing. Don't let it stress you too much all the time. Enjoy the child, because, you know, they're wonderful, they're entertaining, they're interested, they're inquisitive, they want to learn, they want to communicate. So go with it. Enjoy it. Keep working at Natural Auralism. It works. There are just too many very, very effective young people around whom I know have been through a system, who are very, very highly effective and who speak and listen very well indeed. It's not luck, it works. And you really all to play for. And what about Ros? Well, she's 32 now. All those worries we had at the outset, will she speak? Will she listen? Will she be able to go to a school, a normal school? How will she do in education? They all seem a long way away now. But in very simple terms, she did learn to speak and listen very well indeed. She went to a mainstream school. I think she had to work harder than the other kids at school. She was tired at the end of the day. She went to university. She has now a very stimulating and enjoyable job. She fulfilled her potential. She's got 2 children. She listens and speaks very well indeed. And above all, this is the most important thing, I think. She says, well, actually, the hearing impairment didn't make an enormous difference in the end. I had to work harder, I think, but I don't think it affected where I went to in my life particularly. So thanks to Ros for keep working as hard as she did, but especially thanks to Natural Auralism, and we owe an enormous debt to friends, grandparents, and especially the Delta.